welcome to the Proven Principles podcast. It's great to have you on.
Yes, absolutely. Is this, I honestly can't remember. Have I been on your show before? I don't remember if we ever did another
No. You're just so busy with podcasts and like enrolling the hospitality content world. No, you've never been on this show, but I mean, I was on yours.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was a phenomenal experience.
Well, I'm glad to be on your show now. I guess I was technically on your platform when we put the Hospitality MD episode and released it to your audience. But I'm glad to be officially on your show, like an organized episode. So thank you so much for having me, man.
You got it. Yeah, it's great to have you. So for those that don't know you, can you give a quick rundown of your background, your career, and up to Hospitality MD?
Sure. Hospitality is so important to me. My mom is a flight attendant. She has been for 37 years. That's like where it's been like in my blood kind of, so much so that, I must have been 6 or 7 years old. I turned my parents' house into a hotel. Literally, they got stayover service in their room. Like their bedroom was cleaned, made their bed like I did this, me and my brother. In-room dining, had a menu that we made for them, like literally placed it on their nightstand with Dr. Pepper, Cheerios, whatever we could, whatever was in the house that we could get our hands on. And so that was my fun as a kid, was playing hotel. And then I continued to play hotel in an actual hotel.
And get paid for it.
And get paid for it, yeah. So luckily I was able to make that transition. And that happened when I was 17. I was in high school. I got a job as a front desk agent at a 310-room Hilton golf resort around the corner from my house. Within like 6 or 7 months, I was a front office supervisor, manager on duty. So I would just go to school, go to high school, and then get off school and then change into my suit, drive to the hotel and work my PM MOD shift. Depending on how busy we were, sometimes it'd be like 1 in the morning and I'm getting off work, not doing any of my homework, not caring about anything, and then maybe going to first period the next day, if not going in whenever I could wake up and go into school. And that was like, it's bad. Yeah. Like I know that was like that was like my senior year of high school. So I already like stopped caring, just naturally. But then you introduce that hotel job that I really, really enjoyed. And that was my pure focus, was being as committed and involved in that as possible. And of course, on the weekends, it was PM Saturday MOD shift and then 7 a.m. Sunday AM MOD shift, there for all the fun always. And that was like where it really, really got serious and got started for me. I knew that like this was where I was made to be, was in hotels. I love them. I did that. And then of course it was time for me to go to college, which I didn't want to go to, but I had already committed to it and my folks wanted me to go. So I went to University of Iowa, for like 8 months. And I worked at a corporate managed Marriott property there. There's 286 rooms, 50,000 square feet of meeting space. It was actually like, for Iowa, it was actually a really, really nice market leading convention center hotel. Really, really was good for the market. They actually just rebranded it to a Hyatt Regency. But I worked there. I was a front desk lead. And it got to the point where I just told my department head, like, just put me on the schedule whenever you want. Like, I'm not going to class anyway, so just put me on the schedule. It doesn't really matter. And yeah, I did that until my college career came to an end. And then I said, okay, I want to go to this like Chicago proper and downtown Chicago and play with the big dogs. So I came back, took the first job I could get as a housekeeping supervisor at the Embassy Suites Chicago downtown. And I think I was 19 at the time, and I was it was the director of housekeeping and then myself and one other supervisor for 368 suites, 65 room attendants, public area.
Sounds like you're talking about today.
Yeah, crazy, right? It was a lot for three of us, but it was great learning, great fun. Learned a little Spanish while I was there. Ate some great food at lunch, and it was fun. And then I went and worked with the gentleman who hired me, who I now work on Hospitality MD with, Greg. He hired me at my first hotel, and then he was downtown now at the Wit, which is my first 4 diamond property. And I took a step back, actually, having been in supervisor roles. I became a front desk agent because that's what they had available. And it was worth it because within like 90 days, I was front office supervisor. And then 6 months later, I was assistant front office manager.
Wow.
And then I went to the Drake Hotel in Chicago as front office manager. I did some task force. I was a director of rooms at the Hilton Oakland Airport. I was a front office manager at the 1,200 room Hilton San Diego Bayfront. I was the first front office department head for the first triple branded hotel connected to the largest convention center in the Western Hemisphere, which is Hilton's at McCormick Place, 466 rooms, 3 hotels, 3 property management systems. That was fun.
Wow.
And then I actually returned to the Wit right before the pandemic. And worked there up until the hotel was actually looted after George Floyd passed away. And since all of our windows were broken, we closed the hotel. I was let go, and and then that's kind of that's where we land ourselves for the most part right about now.
Yeah,
it was about a year ago.
So, for those that don't know, what is Hospitality MD?
Yes, so Hospitality MD actually started back in 2018. So I started that with Greg, the gentleman who hired me for my first hotel job and then brought me back to the Wit Hotel when I took that front desk agent position and took a step back. We started it like right around the time that I started at the Wit for the first time. And just like Greg was listening to a lot of Gary Vee at the time. This was like when you first started listening to it, and it was like, why are you going to let anybody judge you? Just make content. So he started a podcast with his son called Backpack News, which was like a news program for kids that allowed them to digest the news in like a more kid-friendly way. Really good idea, but his son was like 8 or 9 years old, and he wasn't helping at all. He was just kind of, it's hard to do a podcast with your 8 or 9 year old son. So he said, okay, you know what, let me do something that I'm actually a little bit more passionate about. And, he asked me if I wanted to do it with him. And I was like, yeah, totally. I'd love to do a podcast. That'd be awesome. Nice. So we started Hospitality MD, and we, just did some video interviews and, just started meeting people, and then realized that, wow, like we're meeting so many people, making so many connections, learning so much. And then after the Wit closed down, we just were like, let's just like go just like balls to the wall on Hospitality MD and just go full force. So Hospitality MD in its current iteration right now is primarily hospitality media. We have a feature-length documentary film, which we've completed, which is going to be, we actually have a film festival that we're going to be in that's next month, and a couple more we're waiting to hear back from, which will be great. So fingers crossed that we become award-winning filmmakers. That'd be awesome.
Oh, wow. That would be.
So yeah, it's mostly media. We also do hospitality consulting services and task force, and we really the goal is to own and operate a hotel would be great. Multiple would be better, and that's kind of a lifelong goal for the brand.
Nice. So what I wanted to have you on the show to talk about today is your experience over the last, what would you say, like 3 months?
Yeah, just
2.5 months?
Just about.
Just about?
Yeah.
You took, incredible career up until the start of the pandemic. Like many, like myself, affected by it professionally. And, you've had to kind of go out and find other avenues. And I imagine figuring out if you wanted to stay in the industry. Maybe not. I certainly thought about that.
Yeah.
But interesting that all of this kind of culminated in getting your first GM position.
It did. It really did. Because it would not have happened otherwise. Know that.
Yeah.
It would not have happened otherwise.
So this is a really interesting story, and I don't want to lead the witness too much here. How did this getting your first GM position is, if anybody who has ever tried to do it and who has done it knows that it's no easy feat. It's very hard to get there. How did this come to be for you, and especially during what we've been dealing with for the last year and a half?
So I think it was really honestly the atmosphere was right for this to happen for a couple of reasons. It made it easier than I think most people have it happen to them. Like, it really, the reason it happened to me was because I've been out there and I've been vocal in the industry. So like, if I was just kind of doing what everybody else does, which I had been doing, which was basically just working my hotel job and one of hundreds of thousands or millions globally of front office managers or, whatever, or housekeeping supervisors, then I would have never got there, at least not right now, because I would have done it the traditional way, just keep climbing, moving, job hopping, moving to a location that I don't want to live in. Well, whatever people have to do, right, to go and to make
So the Gary V model kind of worked.
So he's not stupid. It kind of works. So basically starting to create content, starting to be vocal, being very kind of opinionated about, my beliefs in the industry and just talking about my experience. Nothing that I didn't know to be true or believe to be true. Just really doing the best I could to be vocal for the industry. And part of that, like I mentioned, this documentary. So I went to the WIT was the number 2 DoubleTree in the brand. And every year we'd be like, who the hell keeps beating us? This is DoubleTree Reading, Pennsylvania. What the hell? Who are these guys? We're downtown Chicago, 27-story glass tower. We've got all these awesome food and beverage concepts. How are we not number 1? So I learned a little bit and started investigating and learned about the man behind that hotel, Craig Poole, who is using his hotel as a vehicle to revitalize the city of Reading, and built this $67 million, 209-room DoubleTree in city center Reading, which was in 2011 the poorest city in the nation, and the hotel was built in 2015. And it really uses. So I tune into the documentary to see the whole story, but essentially I realized, wow, there is a reason why they're number 1. So when I got laid off and let go from my job after the pandemic and the looting and everything, I actually messaged Craig on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I just got let go from my job. Can I come and learn from you in your hotel and see what you're doing to be number 1? And he said yes. So I literally several weeks spent there, housed me for free, fed me for free, let me learn from his team. Like, literally, I was one of them for several weeks. And throughout that process, I went there and brought a camera. I just thought maybe we'd get some cool footage for a YouTube video or something. Ended up really just sitting down and interviewing like plenty of the staff members. And by the time we left, we said, wow, I think we have a documentary. But I learned all this stuff there. And Craig Poole's mentorship has really become a very, very central component to my story, to my development. Just like, I can't think of him enough, and he continues to be a mentor for me. But one of Craig's, like, before he did the DoubleTree, his rise to notoriety has been flipping distressed hotels, and using that brand of radical hospitality and changing people's lives as the foundation for how he manages to flip those hotels. He does it humanely, and he doesn't just flip them from horrible to mediocre and barely hovering in the black. He flips it from like the bottom to like top 10% of the brand, like always, because it's with no capital typically. Like he does this through hospitality through and through. So being kind of associated with Craig, I got a hotel owner kind of started picking up on this and seeing that. And he and I had talked casually as friends, peers, colleagues in the industry for maybe about 6 or 7 months leading up to me becoming a GM for one of his hotels. And we talked about the industry. We talked about my experience with Craig. We talked about should housekeepers get paid by the room or by the hour, just all these things that we're pondering, right? And it was very productive, and I liked his style a little bit. And he said, you know what, we have this Embassy Suites hotel. It's underperforming. It's a distressed hotel. You know, I have this philosophy that I want to try out, which is, you know, we've had very experienced GMs in our hotels, including this one, you know, and they're not cutting it all the time. And like, you know, we have experienced GM who the hotel is still struggling. So do we need experienced GMs, or do we bring somebody in that has never been a GM before, maybe isn't the perfect candidate on paper, considering that I have like 6 years of industry experience under my belt? You know, it's not what you typically probably consider for a GM role. And he said, maybe we can try this, and if we can, you know, equip you with support, and, you know, you have Craig as a mentor and other people that you've met on your podcast that could be mentors to you, and I think that you have the instincts, and you could be successful here, and I think you'd be the right person to turn around this hotel. So yeah, go ahead.
That is an interesting philosophy from the owner's perspective, to leverage your network, to theoretically leverage your network and your connections, thinking that you've got access to all of these industry experts. Bring that whole network into my hotel and try to turn it around.
Yeah, that's what it was, wasn't it? That's exactly what the philosophy was. And I guess I don't know. Well, I want to know your opinion on that. If you think that was animus in nature, or manipulative in nature, or smart, or both, maybe. But I thought his philosophy was very, 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 very interesting, as do you. Because I said, okay, well, I do have unique experience, because like most experienced GMs don't spend their time pondering the industry's biggest questions and learning from and collaborating with people. They don't.
No, a lot don't. I mean, my assertion has always been, and it still is, that if your success has been predicated on doing things a certain way, and you've never been incentivized to change your thinking or behavior because your success hasn't been dependent on it, then there's no reason for you to do that. There's no reason for you to think about things differently. Therefore, over a certain number of years, not only have you not exercised that muscle in your brain, I don't think that you can even see the opportunities in front of you, because it forces you to use a different lens that you just don't have.
Yeah, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And it's not in a lot of people's. It's not a first instinct for a lot of people either. Like I without really patting myself on the back too hard, but I also recognize it's a strength of mine. Like most people don't reach out to the president of the company, the number one DoubleTree, who's changing the game, and say, hey, can I just completely vulnerably asking, can I just come and work with you for free and just
100%.
So that's something that I have absolutely no problem doing, and I love doing that stuff. And because I like to learn, and I don't have all the answers. Again, I only have 6 years experience in this industry. That's only so much time to learn stuff. Mm-hmm. I will say this: I've learned more talking to people like you and everybody else that I've spoken with than I've learned. It's accelerated my learning. It's been years of knowledge that have been imparted on me in an accelerated time frame. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily invalidate practical experience. Like if I had been a director of food and beverage for 4 years, yeah, that would be helpful.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, taking the theory and the practical and putting it together, that's always going to give you the best results. I agree with you. But yeah, it is definitely an interesting idea to consciously leverage somebody's network. I think that when you're hiring a GM, I mean, a lot of hotels are hiring for experience, but you do get, especially somebody who's been in the industry a long time or has moved around a lot, you are getting their connections just by proxy. But to consciously do that in your situation is a very interesting move. So how did that all play out? Big question, I know. But maybe let's talk about, this owner said, I want you to come in. If you're comfortable, maybe give a little bit of detail about the hotel that you went to, and how that hiring and onboarding process went.
Yeah, so the owner, he wanted me to be the GM of this hotel, and this had been I will give credit where credit is due. I mean, a lot of time had been invested into speaking with me and learning about me to a certain extent, because we had I would probably say we had 8 to 12 hours worth of conversation prior to me becoming the GM of this hotel. So it wasn't like we did, a traditional interview. Like it was a relationship that was built and cultivated. And I think strategy very calculated on his part, to a certain extent, as was mine as well. But he said, we have this hotel, it's underperforming. I want you to be the GM. I just hired basically a president of this management company. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, and underperforming might be an understatement.
Yes. And I will elaborate a little bit on that. So I knew he said this hotel is not doing very well. Okay. So I was excited because I thought, okay, here's a really great opportunity to build a reputation. And kind of here I am at a weird point, because I have a decent amount of hotel experience, not very many years, but I worked at a lot of hotels. I bounced around a lot. I have a unique experience, worked with a lot of different teams. So I think I know an okay amount about hotels. I have all these connections that I've built. I've kind of studied with the president of the number one hotel on the brand. I've been successful with HospitalityMD. I've just been named a top 50 hotel leader in the country by International Hospitality Institute, which I was like, it was good. So I'm like, okay, so I have this, but I was feeling a sense of imposter syndrome almost, because I'm not actually working in a hotel currently. So how long do I have before it's not authentic anymore? 1 year, 2 year,
valid.
You know what I'm saying? When does it become that I'm just a big phony, right? So I was excited by the fact this was an underperforming hotel, and the fact that I could, in theory, as the GM, turn this place around, and have a reputation of aggressive turnaround of a distressed hotel to back up my accolades and other stuff, and just the success I've been having from Hospitality MD. So I'm feeling excited when I hear it's an underperforming hotel. And of course, knowing Craig's background as well, I said, well, if I aspire to be like him and he's done this would be great for me too. A great experience. So he says, I hired I think his title is managing director of hospitality, but basically a president or VP of the management company element of this owner operator group. And he's the boss of all the GMs. So he said, you've got to interview with him. So we interviewed, and he showed me a PowerPoint of the hotel, and this is where I found out that this was actually the worst Embassy Suites on the planet. So it was underperforming, right? But it was also...
So you didn't know until that point?
Did not know. I did not know.
Wow.
I really didn't know. So I interview, but it excited me almost even more, because I said, wow, this could really be a story of going from the dead last in the brand to... It would be great if it went to number one.
Not dead last.
But to top 10 or really top 20, just really competing and being a really great Embassy Suites product. So it excited me, but I saw the PowerPoint and was like, wow, this is, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. Certainly there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't see from the PowerPoint or weren't really discussed, that, were surprises when I got there. But again, you see it's the worst. Okay, this is definitely going to be a challenge, but it was invigorating. I was like, I would like to do this. And really throughout the process, I was literally like, man, you've got to be out of your mind. Like, you have this really, the worst hotel in the brand, and you want to hire somebody with no experience to run this place? And he's like, don't worry. He's like, we're going to support you. Everything's going to be fine. Like, I think this is going to work. And this philosophy, right? Okay, I can do that. So I packed up whatever I could fit into my vehicle. I purchased a car, actually, from Chicago. Didn't have a car. Train, bus, Uber. It's my primary method of transportation. So I purchased a vehicle, gave away, sold, donated my guitars, my bed, my everything, basically everything except for some clothes and books and stuff, and things that I could put into a vehicle and drive. So that's what I did. I put everything into my car, sight unseen, drove from Chicago to North Carolina. The hotel was there. Pulled in, parked in the parking garage. The task force GM was there with a bell cart. We said hello to each other.
With their stuff, or to help you with yours?
To help me with mine. Yeah. He wasn't.
I'm on my
he
way
was like,
up.
I'm gone, man. It was, he was great. I'm glad that he was there at the hotel. But he helped me get my stuff out. We went up to my room, and I was actually, part of it was to be living on property as well. So it was living and working in this hotel, which is something that I advocated for. I wanted to do that because I wanted to be close to the point of impact. I knew that it was going to take a lot. And I also knew that we didn't have time to go through the process of searching for an apartment and then doing all this. I was like, we need to get this hotel back up and running now. So I was happy to do it. So pulled up, got my car there. Go ahead, Adam.
No, you go.
Got my car there and started and basically just started. That was Sunday night. Me and the task force GM, I unloaded my stuff. We went out and had a couple beers and just talked about the hotel. and there was so much, my jaw was on the floor for most of our conversation because he was telling me a lot of stuff that I just had no idea about. One of which was that we didn't have any laundry facility for the hotel. And I said, okay, so the linen is outsourced, right? I'm used to that in Chicago. Buildings are built vertically. There's no room for laundry facilities. So it's okay. This is normal. Well, yes, it's normal if you have the par levels to accommodate a outsourced.
Here we go.
And it's normal if you are in a market that has a, linen service or multiple providers of linen that are equipped to be doing this for you. So the discovery was basically that the laundry operations are crippling the hotel. That was one big discovery among a lot of other things. And so I was surprised, but I started working. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I just started on Monday. They actually, I will say this because I think this is relatively, relevant to the conversation. There was a kind of like a training sheet, an Excel sheet that was a 2-week designed program of like, you're going to be with the task force GM, for those first 2 weeks, and you're not going to make any decisions for the hotel. You're basically just going to abide by this sheet that is going to go through. You're going to learn all about the company's policies, what we need at the corporate office, whatever we need you to do. You're going to learn about that. You're going to learn about the hotel. You're going to learn about kind of best practices for just what does a GM do when they wake up first thing in the morning, things like that, which I said, okay, this is great for a first time GM. I could really appreciate this. What was really not taken into consideration was when you go to a hotel and you're the only salaried manager in the building, for a full service Embassy Suites property that's under renovation. Under renovation as well. I think I forgot to mention that. You don't really get to do that. You don't get to do that. And it became very apparent that was not going to happen. And then it became abundantly apparent it was not going to happen because a GM of another hotel in the company quit, and the task force GM literally like the next day was gone to go and secure that hotel. So what was designed to be a 2-week kind of regimented program turned out to be nothing. And then the task force GM was gone, which I was okay with that to a certain extent. And I figured, okay, well, and kind of the expectation was he'll come back or we'll do something or we'll figure it out. Fair enough. We got to roll with the punches. I'm okay with that. So, of course, it started right in. Flash forward to. Do you have any questions, by the way? I feel like I'm just.
Keep rolling.
Okay.
I do, but keep rolling.
Okay. All right. So, this is week 1. Flash forward to week 2. Or actually, I think week 2 had ended and it had just been continuing again. We have no managers in the building. We have linen deficiencies, cleanliness concerns, product under renovation, team that's not trained. I mean, no key control. Like, think about everything that could be right or wrong with the hotel. Like, there was not one thing that was like, okay, we're good on like this one. We don't have to touch this. Like, it was everything that you could possibly imagine was wrong was wrong. So I had, been working on number 1, keeping the hotel afloat so we can check guests in as the only manager, really in the day-to-day heavy. And I'd also been working on trying to find managers and hiring people because keep in mind, we're also line level staff are scarce as well because of the hiring crisis. So it's just crazy. So
everything.
Yeah, everything. So flash forward to the beginning of week 3, and owners and corporate office are back at the hotel. And the conversations that are had this week are that the progress is not fast enough. It was not. Yeah. This is beginning of week. So it had been, essentially 10 business days.
Define progress as you understand that they defined it. What kind of progress?
So what I understood from my trying to seek clarity in this situation was what they wanted and needed to see, which I don't necessarily disagree with, is a reset of the box. Basically, reset the box is how they described it.
That's very vague.
It is, but I sort of can understand the sentiment behind it, right? Because you have a struggling hotel, you want to reset the box, right? And I guess make it so that there is a distinct injection of like radical change immediately right off the bat. And kind of, I guess, set that expectation.
As defined by a group of people that, to the point of starting the third week, hadn't been there yet.
So they were there my first week for the first 4 days.
They were.
So
okay.
They were, but
okay.
It was very. They were there, kind of looking at the renovation and just very hands off.
See, this is the thing I think a lot of people run into is that when you are managed remotely, the definition of success in the job between the person who's doing the job thinking that they're doing the right thing and the person who is managing that person from afar, who has never really defined what success looks like, or never, at least when somebody is new coming in, doesn't say these are the top 3, 5, 10 priorities. These are the things to tackle first. Get after it.
Yeah, because I guess had I known going into it, if I would have been told, hey, after 10 business days, we're going to show up to the hotel and basically say that this is not going fast enough and we need more, I would have probably said, no, I'm good then, because I can anticipate that there's going to be a conflict of expectations and a conflict of reality and delusion.
100%. You smell it right away.
Right.
Yep.
And it just would not be authentic, and it wouldn't be the long-term success needed to stabilize a hotel from the depths of the abyss of failure and bring it up to where it needs to be. Because how does the phrase go? Like, fast money doesn't last long. And that's kind of like I think that was attributed to like dealing drugs, basically. Like, you can make fast money, but you're going to end up in jail and you're going to be broke or you're going to be dead or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the same thing can apply to hotel management as well. Fast, the illusion of fast success is instability, and chances are it's not going to last very long. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, man, I got a lot that I could say on all that, and I think you're 100% right. But I don't want to derail where, starting the third week with some corporate folks there. But since reflecting on that conversation, have you thought about anything that you would do differently if you were ever in the same position next time? Or did that conversation highlight some of the things that to be just wrong in the industry that need to change? And you're more steadfast in your resolve on how you would maybe do it the same way again?
As I look back looking back at the entire experience, there are definitely things that I would say that, wow, I think it would have been better if I did this or did that, or didn't do this or didn't do that at that time and waited, or did it sooner. all of those things. Like I've learned a lot, right? And a lot of things, you know, going into a distressed hotel as a GM for the first time, like I'm learning, and I'm of course thinking, what could I do better next time? But the challenge that I have is, when I look back at this experience, particularly, the challenge that I have is, how could I have done it better? Is really, because I not thinking to myself, I'm the best, perfect GM in the whole world and I did everything right. It's not that. I know that I could have been better and changed things and how I approach things or prioritize different things. I know that. But when I look back, I think that the challenge of that is how I could have done that. And the biggest reason I say
realistically done it.
Realistically done it, yeah, and how, because a bandwidth of one person is only so much. So it wasn't for lack of trying, because I think, did I work hard? Yes. Did I push myself to the limit? Yeah. Did I try? Absolutely. Was I invested? 100%. Could I have done things different? Absolutely. But then I have to remember, because as humans we adapt so quickly, and the severity of the situation begins to dwindle quickly because we adapt to it. So then I think back to the feeling that I felt on that first day walking in and realizing, wow, there's no managers here. That we, like, not one thing is correct. The hotel is under renovation. We're busy. We're sold out. We need to check people in. We need to clean the rooms. We need to do the basic transaction of accepting money and selling them a room. So I think about all this, and that's where I say, well, shit, like, yeah, if I could go back and change something, yes, but would I have changed spending the time to ensure that the guests could check into the hotel? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Can I even say that? Right? Because what would I be, how successful would I be if I ignored that to focus on other things? But then it could also be said, well, by focusing on checking the guests into the hotel, other things were not, accomplished, and that deteriorated my success. So it's such a catch-22 for me that I haven't fully processed it yet, but I keep coming back to that because I try to think how. I know the what, but I don't know the how, and I'm struggling with the practicality of it.
So in that conversation at the 3-week mark, not moving fast enough, were you given any clarity on what they wanted you to focus on at that stage, or was it still ambiguous?
So what we did was basically put together a just kind of a list of urgent things that need to get done. So that was helpful. We decided, some of the things that they thought were urgent, I didn't think were urgent. Because it was everything was wrong, right? So you could have had so many different, interpretations of what needed to be done, but we came to a pretty good consensus on what needed to be done. And that was it. And then there was one for me, and then there was one for the owners in corporate office that they were going to kind of focus on as well. Mm-hmm. And,
which makes sense. Dividing duties, and there's more resources at corporate office than on property. So
yeah, absolutely.
They can do some of the lifting,
and some of because keep in mind too, the hotel's under renovation, but there's also some like just big ticket capital items that need to be repaired, fixed, that aren't even a part of the renovation. Multiple air conditioning units in the public space and in the meeting rooms that just simply weren't functioning. And those are, $30,000 each to replace and get bids on, or, skylight was in the atrium was leaking. So those are things that, like, those are ownership items. Those are ownership things that they should be focusing on. Great. So they had their lists. I had my stuff that I was going to be looking at, and they left, and you know, things still crazy, still sold out every day, still just struggling. You know, I got I got one manager, actually, I think around that time, front office manager, which was good. And I promoted somebody else to assistant front office manager, which was good, with the intention of, because one of the big things too is everybody has something to say to you when you first start out as struggling a hotel. Mm-hmm. Everybody. Mm-hmm. Owners, as we see, they have something they have to tell you. Everything is on you, right? So they got to talk to you about that. The team has, oh my gosh, like everybody is like, okay, we're like, you know, moths to a flame. We're coming to talk to you about something, or ask you for something, or see if you can get us this, or we need this, or we're not happy, or this is what happened. The previous GM did this, and this is what I was abused here, and all this kind of stuff. I get it. Like, you're trying to seek your savior, I guess, if you will, and you're also trying to see, can I trust this person? And any conversation is an indication of of how much they can confide or not confide in you, or you know, that anxiety that you have as a team member when you see a new GM come into the hotel you know is struggling. Mm-hmm. Am I going to lose my job? You know what? So that any attempt to make contact to confront the unknown of who this new GM is an attempt to relieve some of their anxiety, or give them permission to feel more anxiety. Right. So I get that. And then the guests, of course, I mean, every weekend I would stand in the breakfast area, and just a queue of guests would just form and just start talking about what was wrong. But I was confronting that because I needed to hear it. I needed to know, not that they were telling me anything that I couldn't already see with my own eyes. But one of the things that I think helped me be successful was, like, I'll have one example of a guest who, I was riding the elevator down, and I was in there with him, and I said, "How is your stay going?" And he said, "You have big balls asking me that question." He's like, "I respect that, because I know that you know that I'm going to be complaining about something, but you still ask me that question anyway." Which is kind of cool that he said that, because I'm like, okay, you're going to be reasonable. I can level with you. So I was very open about my situation. I said, "Hey, this is, you know, definitely a struggling hotel. I actually have come from Chicago to get this hotel back on track, to help the people here, to make sure that these experiences for our guests are good, to kind of help us get through this hump of the renovation and be better for the future. And that's exactly why I'm here." So of course I ask you that question, because I need to know. And he told me everything, and I said, "Thank you for your contributions. Like, your stay won't be in vain now." And it almost made him feel like, and I did this with a lot of guests, like, it almost made it feel like their experience as a guest was like they were a martyr. Like, they had to have that negative experience so that future guests could have a positive one. But I brought them in on the mission and made them feel like they were a part of the process. Like, your contributions are critical so we can fix this hotel. And Smart. The guests were very, very pleased with that, and it made them feel good. And the team, I would do the same thing for them. So I think, like, I wouldn't change how I approach that process at all. I think that was big, and that's where I needed to spend my time too. Was working with the team and the guests to learn and be better and get them better too, and set a good example. But I spent so much time doing this. I hired a front office manager and was like, I can't spend all day, like, as much as it's good, I can't spend all day taking complaints from the guests, which literally would be hours upon hours every day, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I need somebody to, like, just own this and do this and be the person to handle this, AM and PM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you absolutely, because you can't be everywhere.
cannot be everywhere.
Because in this situation, and I think that this gets lost on a lot of people, you weren't sitting in your office, feet up, spreadsheets, trying to, find another penny. You are boots on the ground, hands in the trash bin, making beds, flipping rooms, checking people in and out. And I think that that's the piece oftentimes that gets missed. It's the connection between the amount of time and energy that a hands-on, like quite literally a very hands-on in the operation GM, working in a hotel like you were working in, versus the amount of time available to you to plan and execute the larger things that need to get done, managing the renovation, getting 3 quotes on the capital project that needs to happen,
right?
Managing all that, right?
Going through resumes and tapping in and going out and saying, I'm in this new market, I don't know anybody. Where can I find talented people to help me? Like, I love where you're going with this, Adam, because this was one of the biggest things. There's no time for being a GM, and what I guess I can take away from this, and you can, I guess, validate or invalidate based on your experience. But when you're going into a struggling hotel, or really any hotel, and you want to make an impact, it's a very creative process. It's very artistic. And I felt that I was it was almost impossible to be creative, and I didn't notice it as it was happening. But I eventually, looking back, think, wow, because I was just struggling to keep the people from walking out and quitting, and the guests checked in, and then of course the supply chain shortages and all that kind of just struggling to keep the hotel even from completely capsizing,
getting worse,
from going backwards. It was very I didn't have the luxury of creativity, reflection, planning, strategizing.
No. You're
or even really diving in and looking and being it had been probably 6.5, 7 weeks before I actually said, I'm going to go look at the budget for the hotel. Literally, because I just didn't have the time, and it was so all over the place, man, that I was let me actually go and see what we're being expected to make in revenue, and how much we should be spending on stuff. I mean, it was just
and probably a meaningless budget because it was done in 2020 for 21.
And we were beating budget on revenue and stuff. But I just wanted to this. You would think this would be something like a week 1 situation. Would be to go
part of that structured self-directed orientation process, that was in place. And that disconnect between being hands-on in the operation and being a true GM, where you can get above the fray, you can get that 10,000-foot view of the place and be strategic and start playing chess. You can't do that. And I imagine, based on what you're telling me, is that your experience in that 3-week meeting, and I'm guessing subsequent meetings after that, where things aren't moving fast enough, is that there is a fundamental disconnect and misunderstanding about the amount of time and the number of things that have to happen to right-size the operation versus the amount of time to tackle the more strategic, maybe larger pressing items from the ownership's perspective, and with their understanding of what your job is on property.
That's the fundamental pain that existed, and that's the fundamental, I think, reason why they would have never been satisfied, because they didn't understand. The number one reason why I would have been frustrated, and almost feeling stupid, because am I is this something that I'm doing wrong? And I'm really trying to figure this out, because I want to be good. I want to be a good GM. I want to fix the hotel. So, okay, what am I doing wrong? But again, then I think back to, how do we not check the guests in? Do we not get the rooms clean? Do we not get the supplies we need? Do we not, what do we...
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that leads to the next question. And I know, you're sort of running through a timeline here. But in reflecting on everything, did you take anything away from how do you prioritize something when everything is a priority?
It's a great question. Like you're asking, what did I learn from that, or what? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What did you learn from it, and would you approach it differently the next time? Because,
yes.
And let me. I know you're thinking about it, but like the subtext is, just because it's a priority for you doesn't mean it's a priority for me. So when you're a GM and you have everybody coming in and telling you the most important thing in their world that needs to get done, you need to find a way to put that in an order of that quadrant, that like urgent, important, not urgent, that thing, and be able to then figure out how each thing fits into one another. And if you solve this thing that's way over here, that might actually solve problems down here. And then I'm killing two birds with one stone and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But you need time to be able to think about the operation and time in to understand all of the inputs to be able to do that.
Yes, I agree. And, another thing that I think is relevant too is when you bring people in, like hiring support, like supervisors and managers, which I have, which I did while I was there. They need time.
Mm-hmm.
They need time, which is something that I was very acute to. I was like, I know that these people or this person is going to need time, and I want to make sure that I'm sensitive to that and I support that. But another big fundamental disconnect would be then corporate office and ownership, like knowing that I've hired new people. You didn't get the right people because they're not helping you, or they're not. And I said, well, wait a second. There's a few different options here. They could have either, depending on who it is, for managers, it's typically, this is not going to be their first time working in a hotel, but for anybody that you're bringing on board right now, they're either first time hoteliers. They've either been out of work for 18 months, or they're in a new role that they've never been in before. Right. So if somebody was great 18 months ago, chances are they're not as good as they were back then because they haven't been in the cut, and they need spring training like an athlete.
Yeah.
So I try to explain this to them. Listen, we brought in this new manager, but you have to realize it's a atomic shock to come into this hotel, period. So we have to be sensitive to that. We need to let them process those feelings and emotions, because psychologically, anxiety causes cognitive impairment. We literally know this. So if they're feeling anxiety and they're feeling anxious, we can't press and contribute to that because they'll deteriorate. And literally, this is not disputable. This is factual psychological science. So we have people who we are trying to be sensitive, so we don't cognitively impair them by our doing. The hotel itself is probably going to do that to a certain extent already. So what can we do to alleviate, or at least not add to it? They also need time to remember what it's like to be a front office manager, for example, because they haven't done it in a year and a half, or this is their first time. They made that transition from assistant manager to department head, or from supervisor to assistant manager, or whatever, and they need to learn how they fit in. And they also have no structure or anything to work with. So they need to be creative so they can think about, how do we solve these problems together? So all these things we need to be empathetic to. It's not they've been here for 4 days. why haven't they contributed to what you need to be successful? Now you have the wrong people with you. And one thing that I actually, said at one point was, is nobody good enough? Like, this is actually genuinely a question that I said, like, is nobody good enough? Because we have, I'm not moving fast enough. The previous GM apparently wasn't good enough. The people that we're hiring to support us, they're not good enough. At what point do we have an issue with that?
How many GMs did they have in their tenure of being owner of the hotel where that property was the worst performing in the brand?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
Okay. Estimate. Do you know how long they owned it?
They've owned the hotel for 3 years, but have only managed it it was owned but managed by another company. And the management company is actually, I think they're the management company that manages the most embassy suites out of any management company.
Got it. Previously,
yes.
Yeah. How long has it been the worst performing in the company or in the brand?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll be honest.
A while. It doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe it had kind of been like that ship floating down to the bottom of the ocean. Maybe it wasn't just like that, and it's been settled down there for a fair amount of time. But we're not talking about it had really ever been like in the top performing embassy suites.
Yeah.
And it spent most of its time on the bottom or roughly in there. And it just happened to make its way to the absolute worst.
Yeah.
And I think the renovation probably kind of accelerated it to being the worst because then you have guest expectations like, oh, there's no pool, there's no fitness center, there's no anything. So it had been quite a while then. And in terms of number of GMs, not completely sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, my point is that and your question is a valid one, if not emotional at the time, but you're getting pressed in a very unreasonable way. So it's a very understandable question to ask, and I think anybody would. But at some point, somebody who's been there a little bit longer than 3 weeks needs to look in the mirror.
Yes, and I think that's exactly what my point was. I'm like, so we've had the hotel owned for 3 years, and now at 3 weeks, we're kind of. I felt like a scapegoat a little bit for the problems that were happening, and it's not a good feeling to feel like that. And again, you're just kind of feeling like, what. Is there a way to come back from this? Was really another thing, because I'm like, this is supposed to be the honeymoon phase too, And I'm not saying like it should be all rainbows and unicorns. Like we're there to fix the hotel, and it should be done.
There's also
quickly.
A courting phase, though. To your point, like honeymoon phase, like you should be getting indoctrinated into the way the company does things, and I hopefully want you to stick around for a long time and become a productive member in the company, and then you can go on and do other great things for them. But that all starts in buying into the mission, and that if you can't get someone to buy into the mission in the first 30 days that they're there, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, because there was no mission to buy into. There was no mission to buy into. I had a mission as an individual, which was to help the people in the hotel and to make it better and to bring this hotel back from the depths of hell to being something that we can actually morally allow people to stay in without feeling guilty or feeling like we're being disingenuous or quite frankly robbing people of their money to stay there, right? So that was a mission that I had. The problem, and I think this is we have some of the smartest people in the industry, smartest people, the vice president of companies. They can acquire hotels. They know what to do when they're buying. They know how to underwrite really well. They know how to negotiate purchasing debt from another hotel and how many cents on the dollar they're going to pay for whatever accounts receivables they still have, like all this stuff. They're so smart. I don't know anything about that stuff. They're so smart. But then when it comes to basic, just basic, I guess, leadership or basic management of people or how to get somebody to want to help you, it just like, it's like, these are really the smartest people that our industry has to offer. These are the smartest people. Mm-hmm. And that was what was glaring to me. I'm like, I'm no expert. I'm just a first time GM, young guy, just trying to figure out what to do. But I'm like, I knew that this wasn't correct. So again, we have this conversation, and there's tension starts to form, primarily between myself and my direct manager from the corporate office. And he came to the hotel the next week. So this was like, and he didn't tell me he was coming. He just showed up. And I didn't know why, and he didn't tell me why he was there. And we didn't talk much, but he stayed for, 4 or 5 days, left. And then next week I get a calendar invitation just to talk, catch up. I think the title was Property Visit Follow-Up. And I said, okay, interesting. So we do the meeting, and it turns out that my boss had actually come in and taken pictures of things that he was not happy with and presented this in a PowerPoint about how everything was going wrong. And it turned out to be a segue for a performance improvement plan after 3.5 weeks basically on the job. And that was just like deflated me completely, man, because I was just like, so here I am. I left my life that I was very happy with, where I have friends, belongings, an apartment, being relatively successful. And I sacrificed all that to help somebody's business, to grow my reputation, to help other people, right? But I sacrificed that because I trusted that this was going to be something positive. And here I am being presented with a document that basically says, if you don't do this, we're getting a new GM in here. And
those are very difficult to come back from. Even if you did all those things, it's always hanging over your head.
It is. It makes you, it just feels like you've got the gun. You've got the gun to your head.
Yeah.
It's threatening. It's
incredibly
anxiety inducing. And, as we know about anxiety, it causes cognitive impairment. So now I'm like, I'm not even trying to be creative anymore and fix the hotel. I'm like, what can I do to survive?
What's on this piece of paper? I will just do these things. Yep.
Right. What can I do to just make it through to see the light of the next day? And then before you know it, it's not authentic anymore. It's just,
yeah.
There's no heart. There's no creativity. There's no fixing the hotel. It's just, okay, so now I'm just a puppet, essentially, with a gun to my head. Do this or die, essentially.
Yeah.
And that was tough. That was tough for me.
At that stage, are you thinking, what am I doing here?
I did feel that way. I did. And I said, I'm in a city that I'm unfamiliar with. I don't know anybody here. I'm relying on the hotel for housing. And I have a gun to my head, and it's like, what?
You have zero leverage in this situation.
Zero. Nothing. And I just, the tension started to build, and then this guy, he would keep coming back unexpected, literally like leave on a Saturday, come back Sunday night, like boom boom, like just not telling me anything, showing up, sneaking around, taking pictures of things, and just I started not to be like included in conversations, and I'm like, I know that something's going to happen here. And sure enough, this was a day I was doing payroll actually, and I see this was the corporate office was there again, my boss and the corporate director of human resources, and I'm doing payroll, and I see this new name in like the pending onboarding section of the HR system. Like, okay, well, I'm really busy, and like, so I'm just going to ignore this and I'm going to keep doing it. But since HR is here, maybe she did, maybe she ended up hiring somebody. Maybe we have a new room attendant starting or whatever. Like, this is what I was thinking. I said, I'll look at this later, but I need to submit payroll. Sure enough, bring me into a room, and a couple hours later, and they don't tell me this, that this name would be the new GM of the hotel, this pending onboarding person. But they basically went on to, again, kind of reiterate all the things that they weren't happy with. And, basically said, we're not, they said, you know what, Kyle, like you're going to be fine. You're not failing. You just weren't ready for this. And basically kind of like very lightly let me go. And, they gave me the opportunity to resign and everything like that. And I was like, just kind of like, what? I felt it, right? We felt all this, but I'm also like, what the heck is this? And they said, why don't you stay until Friday and all this kind of stuff? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Turns out that name was the new GM who they had already hired, and this was actually a relocation from another state as well for somebody who's going to be living at the hotel, a pre-planned long process of bringing this new GM on board. And I left on a Wednesday, and by Thursday the new GM was moving into the hotel. And keep in mind, they wanted me to stay till Friday, so I guess I would have been expected to train the new GM then when she came in. So yeah, this was just, humbling experience. I'm still trying to reflect and learn the best I can from all of this, but yeah, I'm still processing it, man.
Yeah, fair. It's huge. You experienced two of the biggest things that can happen in somebody's life, the most traumatic things, and that's moving and losing your job. And that happened like within 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Of one another. That's huge. Looking back on it, was it your desire to be a hotel general manager, or the idea of turning around the hotel and being a part of that larger experience that drove you to take that job in the first place?
It was the turning around of the hotel, for sure. Because I thought, what a great, again, what I was feeling, like that sense of imposter syndrome, like, well, again, I'll use that, like the top 50 hoteliers hotel leaders in the country designation. I'm like, so this, I was like, I don't deserve this. I'm like, I'm not even in a hotel. I'm like, I don't have any huge track record of hotel leadership to show. I was a department head. I maybe helped people give better service, and I spent some time cleaning rooms and inspecting rooms too. I can do some basic hotel stuff, some rooms division stuff, but I'm no top 50 hotel leader in the country. I just talk shit on my podcast. so I wanted to earn something. I wanted to go on an adventure that I would be coming back out of it better, stronger, more formidable, and actually be able to say, okay, I think I do deserve any potential recognition that I might receive. I think I would deserve that because I've shown that I can do this now. And that was why I wanted to do it. But now I'm actually on the opposite end of the spectrum now, where I'm like, so now I tried to do this and it didn't work out. And now I even feel more like an imposter, more like a failure, but I'm trying to avoid that, right? I want to say I learned so much, which I did. And, this wasn't the right opportunity for me. New doors will open. When one door closes, one door opens. It's really easy to say that and to want to believe that, but it still is for me right now, it's very, very real that I'm like, I feel like a phony. I feel like an imposter. I feel like I wasn't good enough. That here I am, I can talk all this shit, but then when it comes time to actually doing it, I just can't do it.
I think I completely understand that. I mean, I think you were the victim of circumstance here, largely. Because everybody who's a GM has been a GM for the first time. Mm-hmm. So we've all been through it. I think the circumstances that you found yourself in were unique. Probably not super unique, like not one-off unique, but like definitely a very, very small subset of hotels. Because every hotel in every company is the worst in the company. Like every company has that hotel. Mm-hmm. So like, that exists. But sharing your story, I think is very valuable for people. There's, the people that worked at that hotel are experiencing something similar to what you experienced on a different level, but like you're all in the same boat to a certain extent. I wanted to ask you about whether or not you felt the mind shift from being a department head or a division head or like an executive level in a hotel to being a general manager. But I'm also wondering now, like, were you there long enough to even realize that was going on?
Okay, can you elaborate on that question for me? I want to make sure I understand you right.
Yeah, every time somebody takes a leap into a position of authority, a position of being responsible for larger and larger buckets within a business, you have to make this shift from, I don't do what I did anymore. I do this new thing now, and this new thing is stretching me in ways that I don't really know where to stretch yet. But I do know this. I do know that I can't look at the world the same way that I did yesterday, because today I'm responsible for this much more. And so you have to seek out learning and understanding and ask the right questions and ask the wrong question, a few times, and find out who is going to be able to help you along the way and who the power players are. And like, it just really starts to broaden your perspective on work and corporate life. But you have to, when I went through that personally, I was fortunate enough to be in very high performing, stable hotels, stable environments with really great ownership groups and a really great management company. So I was able to have the time to do that. And I think more importantly, whether it was said explicitly or not, an understanding from the people like the GM and the director of HR and that when you do promote someone into a higher caliber position, it does take them time to get comfortable in it. So you're allowed that runway. Okay.
So with that being said, I think I had the mindset shift to the extent that it was possible for me to have the mindset shift prior to and at the beginning of me starting that position, because I had like really just like kind of meditated on it for a long time, and I understood what I was getting myself into to the extent that I could understand without seeing the hotel. But I knew that this was all on me. I knew that I was going to need to ask the right questions, have that support, seek knowledge, educate myself, be resourceful. I knew that, like, I think I had that. And even at the beginning, I remember when I first started, I was very, I felt that, you know, I had like that, I guess I go back and say like the creativity to think, okay, what can we do to solve these problems? How can I solve this as independently as I can? And you know, all this stuff that I felt like that mindset had shifted, and I knew what my objective was. But I think the more that the the grip from the owners and corporate office tightened, the more I actually felt myself receding. And I think maybe that's why, like, if I wasn't there long enough to see it all the way through the process, because it was there. I felt it. I felt a change in me. And then I went backwards, but then I never went back to that again.
Yeah, because you get into survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I think, to answer your question, yes and no.
Yeah. Two more questions for you. Would you go back and work at another hotel?
Yes. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Because I'm not done. I haven't finished yet. I don't know what I need to know yet. I just feel like it just seems incomplete.
This isn't the end of the story.
It feels incomplete to me in general, like, even let's say I didn't have this experience because I was not working in a hotel for almost a year, you know, after my previous hotel job. And I told you I was feeling like this is not authentic. I need to build a reputation. I need something. I'm not done yet. And now I find myself feeling that again, where I'm like, this really makes me upset, you know, to be honest with you. Like, I'm upset by the way things worked out, but I still feel like I'm not, it just feels incomplete, man. It just doesn't, I don't feel like I'm done quite yet with hotels. I don't feel like I've accomplished what I need to accomplish. I don't feel like I've learned what I needed to learn. I'm not where, like, I can really say, okay, I don't know, man. Like, and again, I look at you as somebody who, like, you've been like in very esteemed roles, like very high profile, like we're like probably like top 1% of like global hoteliers will like ever get to, like, that's, and maybe like if I had done what you've done up until this point, I could maybe say I did the game. Like, I played at the top level. I was successful at it. I played the game, and now I can, there's a sense of resolution. There's a sense of resolution to that you've had, or maybe you haven't had, but I do kind of feel like if I had done what you've done, I could say this chapter is closed. I don't need to work inside of a hotel as an employee or manager of a hotel anymore. I can do something else. Now, I want to continue. Hospitality MD. I want to keep speaking my voice. I want to still own and operate my own hotel one day. But the being inside of a hotel is something that's still very special to me, still very sacred to me. It can't be replicated in any other environment that I've noticed. And I have no closure on my hotel career yet. I can't be done yet. It's too early.
I like that. It's good to hear that it didn't kill the fire. That's good.
No, it didn't.
Last question. What questions would you ask next time going into a new job like this?
To the owners? Yeah, okay. I would have asked with complete clarity what the timeline was in their minds for turnaround. What did that look like? I would want the chronology that they would be holding me to and the expectations they would be holding me to, basically in writing, like literally, like almost like a timeline in advance up front for like a turnaround like this. What is, again, specifying the problem, specifying the success, and specifying the time that they, and the expectation of what that would look like. That would be the biggest thing, because again, like I kind of had mentioned earlier, if somebody would have told me that in 2 weeks we'll be showing up at the hotel telling you that it's not going as fast as we need it to go, I would have said, okay, well, good luck finding a GM. It's not going to be me. So that's the biggest one. Another question that I probably would want to ask before doing this, I would probably ask to speak to another GM in the company.
Good one.
I would ask to speak to another GM in the company, because this particular company, I witnessed GM turnover while I was there, even in my role, multiple times. And yeah, there were some hotels that were pretty stable within the company, but that could be a lot of variables for that. But I think I would have said, give me a list of all the GMs. I mean, this company only has 10 hotels. Give me a list of all the GMs and their information, and I'll pick which one I want to call, or I'll call 2, or I'll call 3. Don't just give me the one of like the hotel that's performing really well that you don't have to talk to all day, and give me their information. Let me pick and choose who I want to call. And that's probably one of the things that I would 100% do.
I like that. Those are 2 really good questions to ask. Definitely. I mean, if this is a good lesson, I think, for a lot of people who are going into new jobs. If you don't have a very clear and explicit conversation about what the expectation is for you and your position by or from your boss through the interview process, you have to ask, and they ask you, do you have any questions for me? And you say, no questions, but you don't really understand what you're going to be graded on. That is a big mistake. You've got to, if you don't have a clear understanding, you have to lead the witness a little bit. You have to ask them questions, and not vague questions. Not like, how will I be graded in this role? Like that doesn't answer your question. You need to know, like, what are the deliverables? What are your expectations on these? How quick do you want them done? Who will I be working with? What is their responsibility in making sure that these things get done? You have to really go through a detailed interview of them so that like, first of all, whether you can do the job or you want to do the job. It'll give you some insight into the corporate culture in the organization. And if that person that you're talking to doesn't know the answers to your questions, that's also a red flag, mind you. But it will illuminate a lot about the position. And I think that, that, and then talking to other people, or 2 or 3 other GMs. Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it any other way moving forward now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story. I think this is opening yourself up, being vulnerable, sharing your experience, what you learned. There's a lot of people going through very similar experiences right now, even though sometimes these things feel very singular to yourself. So I know this is going to help listeners. There's no doubt.
Well, it's helped me already. Very therapeutic. And, I hope, again, like Adam said, I hope that for everybody listening, that it helps you navigate whatever you're going through in your hospitality career or otherwise. At HospitalityMD, I don't know by the time this gets released what the status will be on this, but we will be doing I was at this hotel for 9 weeks. So the series will be titled What I Learned in 9 Weeks as the GM of the Worst Hotel in the Brand. It'll be a 9-episode podcast series presented by HospitalityMD, where I'll be bringing up a story, something that happened at the hotel, and then dissecting it and extracting the lessons from that story. And there'll be a new story, new topic every week. And that'll just be even more therapy for me and more learning for all of you out there.
Perfect. I think that's going to be really interesting to hear. More of a deep dive.
It is.
Sure.
We're gonna go into just really just nitty gritty specific stuff. Analyze the whole everything.
Nice.
Everything I learned.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you or learn more about what you're up to, where should they go?
You should go to www.hospitality-md.com. You should go to my LinkedIn page. You should go to... Actually, here's what you can do. I want to make it very easy. One link with all the links within it. It's www.solo.to/HospitalityMD. You can find my personal LinkedIn page in there, all of Hospitality MD's social networks, podcast links, everything at that one singular link.
Sounds good. Perfect. Hey, Kyle, thanks again. This was great.
Adam, thank you.